It has been an unusual year. A lot of things have not turned out the way we expected. But that's true in a whole lot of things. As many of you have heard my story before and how I come to stand before you today as a representative of the Presbyterian Church USA. That was never my plan. God had another plan. I wanted to do something else. Work in the church, but not in this fashion. But each step along the way, God planted, and regardless of which way I may have directed my foot, it still landed somewhere along his path until I arrived here. We have plans that don't turn out that way sometimes. Something different happens. Many of you also know the story of my oldest son and his wife. His plan was to become, he got real into fitness, joined the Marine Corps, and when Tracy and I bought a farm, it was understood that everybody had work to do. All the kids showed an animal, whether they wanted to or not, and some of them did not at all. And it was their job to feed that animal. It was their job to train that animal and get them ready for livestock shows that we went to. When you have a farm, the fences need mending, the barn needs cleaning, all sorts of things need doing. And the kids all blamed it on the animals or Tracy and myself. Anyways, we did farm work and a lot of manual labor. Walt turned from, as most of them did, turned from sort of bowling pin shaped adolescent into a taller, stronger version of himself, and the more that he did that, the more he liked that, until he ended up being very, very into fitness. And when he went off to boot camp with the Marine Corps, in his battalion, he was the second fittest Marine, which bothered him tremendously, that he wasn't the first. And he said the only reason that other kid wanted it is because he was a skinny little thing and he could run faster than I could. True or not, he got competitive, put it that way. Very physically fit. And finally it was his plan to leave the Marine Corps after 12 years. He wanted to go and be a college football strength coach at a major university and get into physical fitness even more, something he had researched on his own, put together his own programs, things like that. But then he and his wife had Annabelle. And Annabelle is a physically challenged child, basically is diagnosed with a fairly severe form of epilepsy. In the long Walt's path, he decided he was going to find a cure for epilepsy. So from going to spending hours and hours in the gym, he spent hours and hours in the library at college and is now on a PhD track program to do research for epilepsy. Things turn out different. We start in one way and we end up someplace else. And sometimes the thing that we most desire, we find it's not that important anymore. And there's something better. There's a different way. The wise men saw the star, and we don't know exactly where they came from. Somewhere in the east, probably in the area of Babylon, but it's never really specific. We always assume 3 because there's 3 gifts, but it never really tells us how many of them there were. We knew they traveled a long way, and we knew that as they read the stars, they said something tremendous has happened. And God revealed it to them enough that they knew that some king was born in the Palestine area, and this was a big deal. Important enough that they organized their caravan, they got their gifts, and they headed off on a long journey. If we assume the star appeared when Jesus was born, By the time they get there, Jesus isn't in the manger anymore. The scriptures tell us that they were in a house. It seems that they're still in Bethlehem. But something has changed. Time has passed. But they still can't exactly locate it. There's something with the star we don't know. It's kind of like when they got into Israel, they kind of lost track. Or maybe they just assumed that this is such an important event, everyone will know. So where do you go when you want to find out information? Well, you go to the rulers, you go to the government, you go to those people who certainly, if we've come to worship a king, then certainly the king will know where this new king is. And the king will be on board with praise and worship and glory. The king wasn't at all. In fact, it says, after consulting with his advisors and telling them this child was born somewhere in Bethlehem, he had a private meeting with them. And notice he didn't offer, this is so important, I didn't know this, I want to come with you. You go find him, then come back and tell me. And he didn't tell them what his plan was, but if we read later in, his plan was to execute this child. So the Magi went and they found Jesus, and we have the story that we read here. And as they were done with their visit, they were about ready to go home, something told them, a vision, a dream, how exactly it appeared. Was it a deep feeling inside? Did an angel wake them up standing beside their bed in the middle of the night? But it was clear enough that they knew they were supposed to go differently. When they went to Israel, they probably went on the most direct route that they knew. If it would have been an interstate highway, they would have taken that. They would have gone along the major trade routes. They would have hit the watering holes for their camels, places where they could purchase food, get resupplied, because they didn't know exactly where they were going when they started this journey. When they left, they were told, go a secret way. Go someplace that Herod can't track you, can't find you. So they went in a much more difficult way. They probably stayed away from the major trade routes. They probably bypassed some of the major watering holes. They may have had to cut supplies a little bit closer because we need to get around. Herod will send out his army, his troops, people looking for us to try to find us. So we can't go the same way we came. It's going to be different. It's going to be harder. But we'll get there. We're still going home, but we're going a different route. We aren't going the highway this time. We're going the back road. The backest of the back road that we can find. That's kind of what 2020 has been for many of us. I know as I've been here several times over the year, I know many of you had vacation plans which all got scrapped. Or many got scrapped anyway. I was supposed to spend 3 weeks in England this summer. That didn't work out. That's the short version of that. Tracy and I are planning on, right now everything's in place, to go to Alaska in about 10 days. And we have to go through all the testing process. You have to have a negative COVID test within 72 hours of departure for your flight, or they'll quarantine you when you land, which is not quite what the plan was originally, to spend a couple weeks in a hotel. So we'll see. But plans have changed. Your Christmas plans change. You may have had plans to go somewhere or to see family, or family was coming to see you, and maybe that happened in a different context. Maybe it didn't happen at all. Mike Thompson, our general presbyter, interim general presbyter anyway, and his family came in shifts over Christmas. That somebody, one set won't come one day, another set come the next day, another set come the day after that, and even in each of those cases, everybody practiced at least as much as they were able to social distancing. And for many families, when we see one another, when we see our friends, over the holidays and special occasions like that, we want to be close. We don't want to sit across the room from them. We want to gather around that table where we have to maybe put in the extra leaf and maybe pull up a few extra chairs, and everybody fits in there somehow. But it's good to have everybody there. And for many families, that didn't happen this year. Maybe some of you were working and were very comfortable in your job, thought things were going well, and all of a sudden your employer, because of the lockdowns, there are fewer people working, and you may be one of those people who is not. Or maybe it was your business. And this year was going to be your year. This was going to be the year we turned the corner. Things were looking good. Business model was looking good. We're going to make enough money this year to kind of have that comfortable cushion and be able to do some other things rather than pouring everything back into the business. And it didn't turn out that way. Or maybe you were one of the very unfortunate ones whose business is not going to reopen when this is all done. Things happen. Or going home by a different way, a difficult way. One we wouldn't have chosen, but it's the one kind of God has chosen for us. In 1988, Home by Another Way was actually the theme of the Montreat Youth Conference. I was at that conference as a small group leader, and I had a youth group there as well. And if you haven't ever been to Montreat, it's a wonderful, beautiful place. And if you ever get to go to one of the conferences or even just go visit, it's worth the trip. It's worth the trip. But Wednesday afternoon is always given over for folks to be able to go and do as they see fit. If you want to go into town, you want to shop, that's fine. If you want to take a nap, that's fine. Read a book, go hiking, whatever it is, it's your time. Many of the groups, Montreat is a little bit outside Asheville. It's in the Smoky Mountains there, and it sits in a valley back up against a wilderness area. One of the national forests and the Blue Ridge Parkway form kind of its northwestern, border, it would be. And there's a beautiful little lake there, stream-fed lake. All the old stone buildings out of there. It's great. So people get on these trails and they go hiking for some of the times on Wednesday. One of the groups that went hiking split off in smaller groups. And when supper time came, some parts of that group were not back yet. When late evening came, they still weren't back. Came time for when most of the folks were headed to bed, they still weren't back. So somewhere in there, the mountain rescue folks got called and they went out to look for them. Ultimately, everybody was found, everybody was fine, hungry, because they hadn't had anything to eat in a while, but everybody